is Britain at its most beautiful. I'm high up on the downs in Sussex, and here, enfolded by woods, is one of the great British estates. This is Goodwood.
Since the late 17th century, this has been the home of the Dukes of Richmond and their sons, the Earls of March. It's one of England's most beautiful estates, and also, as we shall discover, one of its busiest. Since 1802, the name of Goodwood has been synonymous with horse racing. Glorious Goodwood, as it's known, is a celebrated fixture in the English summer season. In the last century, the Goodwood Motor Circuit was built by the 9th Duke of Richmond. I've come to meet his grandson, the Earl of March, who now runs this enterprising estate.
Charles, good morning.
James, hi. Nice to see you.
Hey, good to be here. Well, it's great to be here, because it's all looking so wonderful.
Well, it looks great on a morning like this, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it's fantastic morning. The other thing I noticed is all bustling with activity everywhere.
Lots going on, I'm afraid, yeah.
Yeah.
Far too much, really, but that's how we seem to like it.
And also you've got this sort of slight burden on you that all your ancestors have been exactly the same. Most of them have been very, very busy doing things.
They have. I think they were reasonably productive.
Yeah.
Reasonably productive lot, and bizarrely, all these sports we're involved with at Goodwood were all started by enthusiastic and eccentric members of the family.
I'm told when I get inside there, I'm going to be nicely surprised.
Well, I hope so. Come on in.
Let's go
Come and have a look.
Okay.
What is less well known is that the heart of this estate is a splendid 18th century house containing a magnificent collection of works of art amassed over 300 years. Since I last visited Goodwood, Lord March has been busy restoring some of the principal interiors, putting them back to their original splendour.
Well, this is a bit of a surprise, isn't it? Well, the last time I was in this room, it seemed to be a perfectly normal late 18th century dining room.
Well, until very recently, yes, it was a green Georgian dining room.
I remember, and now it's Egypt.
But it was lost for years and years, and it's very recently we literally discovered it all underneath the paint of a Georgian dining room. There was a lot of talk as a child about this terrible yellow room that had been in here.
Yeah.
And my mother bravely took a little bit of it off, and we all kind of ammed and ahed at it. And then when we moved in, we said, well, to hell, let's have it all off
Yeah.
and have a look. So we stripped it all and found all this incredible marble.
How did you unpick it? Because you say you took the paint off and found this, but were all the details here? Was this great, I can't remember this freezing cornice being here.
It was bizarre the way the room seemed to, in many ways, offer itself up. We kept finding all the bits we needed around the house in different places.
Because how, for instance, did you discover the door plates themselves? You've made up, are they?
No, well, amazingly, this door is a very important part of the room, actually,
Yeah.
because they're false doors, and our decorating team was doing some work next door, and they found the door handle on the other side. So then suddenly we flashed a torch up, and we found the whole original door.
And the decoration here, I mean, you've got these, these are cobras, are they?
Yes, they're wonderful, aren't they?
Yeah, fantastic, these great wings. And here it is, 1800, 1802, something like that. First room, really, of any substance in England in this style. And how long does it take to bring a room like this back to life?
Well, it was an interesting project, because we just kind of started it, not really knowing what we were going to find or how long it was going to take, but it was a sort of 4-year project.
And there's a great candelabra. Was that just put away in a cupboard in here and you brought it out?
Well, no, amazingly, we just bought them back, so I'm really, really thrilled about that. They came up for sale in New York, so we managed to get them back, and they look fantastic on the table.
Yeah, because they were made for here, presumably, were they?
They were made for the room, and as you can see, they're pretty outrageous.
I love the way they're also clearly yours, aren't they? Your coat of arms is spread about at the base, isn't
I know, he didn't pull back, really.
Not at all. And then these wonderful tablets. They're marvellous, because, yet again, here's English craftsmen having to respond to brand new influences. And they're doing it triumphantly well, aren't they? And making something which is possibly not Egyptian, a great candelabra to go on your table.
That's what's so fascinating, I think, about the whole room, is it's a kind of Englishman's interpretation of what they thought Egypt must be like.
And you use it. This is laid up, for breakfast?
It's laid up for breakfast tomorrow, yes. We've got quite a few people staying for the weekend, and we use it a lot as a family, and my children spend most of the time underneath the table, tying up people's shoelaces and stuff. It's a lovely room.
It's fantastic, and I love the way it's just not, even now, you having done all that, created it, and people can come and see it, it's not become a museum in any sense. It's a lively place where people can come and eat and have fun.
So we use it a lot.
Yeah, so would I if I had it. Through here? Yes.
The royal origins of this family are revealed in the ballroom. Another of the staterooms restored by Lord March.
Over the years, this great room has also become the principal picture gallery in the house, and it's now hung with a galaxy of wonderful portraits. And these portraits tell the early history of this illustrious family.
The Richmonds are direct descendants of the royal house of Stuart, and this famous composition by Sir Anthony van Dyck of Charles I and his family is where it all began.
Charles I's eldest son, who becomes Charles II, falls in love with his sister's maid of honour, a beautiful French girl called Louise de Querouaille.
And over on this wall is the alluring picture by Henri Gascard of Louise de Querouaille, who became Charles II's mistress.
And you can sort of see why. There she is, lolling in a sort of idyllic bower, her hair falling down in tresses, playing with a dove, a symbol of love, with young Cupid flying in with his quiver of arrows to her left. She not only attracted the king, had his son, but also held his love and his attention for the whole of his life. She was never dismissed from royal favour.
And the illegitimate offspring of that union became the first Duke of Richmond.
And not surprisingly, at the far end of the room in Pride of Place, is this wonderful portrait by William Wissing of the first Duke. And here he is, about the age of 8, as a Garter knight, already ennobled by his father, Charles II, which is just how he's shown in these great robes. And this extraordinary hat on the left-hand side, built up of endless plumes, is the hat of the knight of exactly that moment. And he was going to go on to buy this estate here down in Sussex and beget a line which leads to the present Dukes of Richmond today.
The current Duke of Richmond, who is Lord March's father, retired from running the house and estate 12 years ago. He's keen to tell me about one of the most important of his ancestors, and his personal favourite, the third Duke, painted here by Sir Joshua Reynolds.
He just loved life and activity, and he was, of course, a member of the younger Pitt's cabinet.
Yeah. So
indeed, there's some nice story about the younger Pitt getting onto him, sending a message down here saying, "Duke, come back to London, we've got to have a cabinet meeting." And he said something like, "I'm enjoying life down here too much, I can't be bothered."
As an energetic patron of the arts, it is the third Duke who so enhanced Goodwood and created the house as seen today.
He was a man with very great vision, and I always say of him, he only had one problem. His vision exceeded his capital.
Yes.
Because he started adding on to this house in a large way, and he actually died in 1806, owing £180,000.
The very room we're in now, when he died, they couldn't finish it. And it all had to stay like that for what, 20 years, 25 years, something like that?
At least.
Yeah.
And the room next door, which is the ballroom, that was in an even earlier state of building, and they took a very long view of things.
Yes.
And they said, no, it'll be all right one day, and they actually finished it 35 years later.
Yes, that is a long view, but it's one of the things that you and your families can take. You admire what your ancestors done, you're going to do your best during your lifetime, and then it's going to be passed on.
It's very important, I think, that in the modern world, in which companies and others have to take such a short-term view, that we can take a very long-term view.
Yeah.
The third Duke planted 1,000 cedars of Lebanon, which he knew his grandchildren would not even see in maturity.
The landscape surrounding the house also inspired the then little-known artist George Stubbs. In 1760 he was commissioned by the third Duke to capture his favourite sports.
It's actually rather wonderful to see 3 incredibly beautiful pictures commissioned by the third Duke.
They mean a very great deal to me and the family.
Yeah.
Because of course they were painted here of scenes at Goodwood.
Yeah.
And one of them, the racing one, still depicts something that we're very actively involved in.
Yeah.
And the first one here is of shooting.
And Stubbs had just come down from Lincolnshire where he'd been studying the anatomy of the horse.
That's right.
And just like the Duke, he was really interested in how these animals worked.
I'm sure that interested the Duke very much indeed.
And I always loved that horse in the left-hand corner of
The one with the page.
Yes, it's just a beautiful picture of a horse.
Yeah, and that really tells you why Stubbs is thought to be the most significant sporting painter, not only of the 18th century, but almost of any century.
Probably
anywhere.
Ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the Black Service is wearing the Richmond livery?
And the Richmond livery, that's it. Yellow, scarlet cap, gold tassel.
So this is shooting, and then over here we get racing.
Yes.
And they're wearing the livery again.
They're wearing the livery too. This is a very important picture for Goodwood because it is a picture of the Duchess, the third Duchess.
And she's what, in the middle?
She's in the middle with the trainer. The three racehorses are being exercised by three grooms in the livery.
And I love the way that by putting in that dog bounding up that hill, you really do get a sense of their speed.
A real feeling for the speed.
Yeah. And then on the right, you see a horse being rubbed down.
It's rather lovely, isn't it? The horse is very beautifully done, but I love the grooms, especially that little one.
The little boy coming out with more hay, or straw rather, to rub him down after he's been exercising. And he's sort of snorting, and you can really feel that Stubbs, like nobody else at that period, understood these horses.
He certainly did. Yeah. And then it's also very important in terms of location, because if you look right at the back, you see the Isle of Wight.
That's the large hump of land.
Southampton Water.
Yep.
And then slightly to the left of that, you see the spire of Chichester Cathedral.
Just sticking up there,
yeah. So probably that picture is pretty close to where the racecourse is today.
And the one person who's missing, of course, is the third Duke.
That's right.
Where do we find him?
Well, he's over here.
Oh, is he?
He's hunting.
Is he the man right in the centre?
He's the man looking round in the middle there, quite young looking.
Wonderful straight back. And then, is this his brother? Is it on the right-hand side?
Yes, Lord George, his brother there, became the next Duke.
Yeah, and the servant again here in your livery, on the left-hand side.
the one in the Richmond livery.
Is carrying what, a horn?
Yes, he is.
Yep.
I have a great friend, the French Duke, who loves hunting.
Yeah.
And he one day said to me, you know, when I fall off the horse with the arm, very painful.
I love the way Stubbs shows you what a hunt's like in the foreground with these marvellous matched pairs of hounds, 10 pairs, which each one feels like a portrait.
Right.
And then out there on the hill, you see it doing its stuff.
Yeah, doing its stuff, going like hell.
It really is like the clappers down that hill. Nobody's ever seen sporting pictures like this.
I always say that even if we didn't live here one day, and we didn't even own these pictures, they never ought to move out of this house, because they say something about Goodwood.
The Sussex Downs, where these sports took place, look much the same today. In the nearby village of Charlton, the Duke took me to see his ancestors' unusually grand hunting box, designed by the Palladian architect Roger Morris.
This is Fox Hall, which was built for the second Duke, because he wanted somewhere where he could spend the night in between 2 days hunting without having to ride all the way back to Goodwood House, which was about 2.5 miles away.
Yeah, but right over the hill. So you can imagine if you had a good day's hunting, you'd be quite tired.
Exactly.
If you're going to go out again next morning at 8 o'clock, what's the point?
And the horses were tired too.
Yes.
And that's what it is.
Simply a bedroom up there.
Simply a bedroom.
It's wonderful looking. It's a classical building for that. Because you actually feel it, can't you? Horses here on your left in the stable, and him going in upstairs, kicking off his shoes, his boots rather, and just having a convivial evening with the friends, presumably.
But it's more than that nowadays.
Yeah. What happens now?
Well, a local man around here has started up a club called the Charlton Hunt Club. It's a dining club.
Yeah.
And once a year, the dining club have their annual dinner in the second Duke's bedroom.
And you go?
I go, myself. I have a great evening.
Yeah.
And we drink rather a lot. And at the end of the evening, we have hunting songs.
You're a good voice at that point. You can John Peel, presumably.
You can John Peel, all that kind of thing,
yes,
that sort of thing. One or two slightly bawdy ones.
Yeah.
Writer and historian Rosemary Baird is the curator at Goodwood. She wanted to make certain that I saw the Tapestry Drawing-Room, which epitomises the third Duke's love of style and beautiful things. It was designed in the very latest neoclassical idiom.
This room was created by James Wyatt in 1776.
Game for the third Duke?
For the third Duke.
Yeah.
And it has this marvellous neoclassical ceiling with all these terrific ovals.
He's always at the cutting edge, isn't he?
Always,
yes.
Duke, always.
And this is Wyatt producing this ravishingly beautiful thing.
Absolutely, and all these figures, these great antique figures you can see around the centre. And the colours, in fact, have never been repainted.
Have they not?
No, we washed the ceiling a few years ago, but the colours are all original.
That must be very rare now.
I think so.
And I love his idea of reflecting everything in great looking glasses.
Yes, more
so you
glass.
bounce the light
Lots of
all
glass.
around you.
Very much in the French manner, of course, because the room was created to take these great tapestries
which he'd
from
bought
Gobelin.
in Paris?
Well, in fact, they were given to him by the king, Louis XV, and Louis had actually made them for his chateau at Marly, his private, enormous chateau.
Yes.
And he didn't need, he had 30 made.
Well, he overextended the order.
Overextended the order.
Yeah.
And he gave quite a number away.
Yeah.
And so the Duke of Richmond, who was ambassador to Paris, was very lucky to have them as a gift.
What's the subject matter?
The subject of all of them is Don Quixote, from that novel by Cervantes that was so fashionable in the 18th century.
And this is the Don himself?
This is the Don.
In armour?
Don Quixote in armour.
What's he doing on this occasion?
Well, he's leaning forward, listening to the enchanted head. And this is an antique statue, which purportedly is telling him all sorts of great wisdoms. But in fact, of course, there's actually somebody under the table.
Oh, that's
speaking.
why all the sort of the curtain under the table is ruffled, presumably.
Yes, it's twitching, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
And of course,
and they all know what's going on.
Yes, they all know what's going on.
It's a
They're
joke.
very amused. The ladies in the background are really amused. And
the great thing about Don Quixote is this wonderfully delicious, naive person.
Oh, yes, yes.
Who believes in the best of everything.
Everything.
And everything just continues to go wrong, wrong, wrong.
Yes, yes.
The other object that caught my eye in this tapestry room is the most extraordinary fireplace.
It's just what you expect from the third Duke when putting together this wonderful room. He didn't go and buy any fireplace. He bought the most unusual fireplace that anybody could think of. It's only when you actually stop and think and look at it, you realise just how odd, unusual, and brilliant it is. And it's the work of a great sculptor from England, John Bacon, in the middle of the 1770s. And what a wonderful confection. How did Bacon actually come to do it? Because is it all one piece of marble somehow lifted from his sculpture studios in the centre of London, in Wardour Street? Or was it brought in bits? Well, actually, it's very clever. The figures on either side are carved out of solid bits of marble. What the sculptor is actually doing is using these folds inside the draper itself. Here's one, and then over here you can see it coming down through here, to allow him to make the piece in independent groups. You get the figure, and then you get this completely separately, and then the center section, you can almost see underneath the hands of these figures how this great swag is actually attached as an independent piece. And it's this ingenuity on Bacon's part and his understanding of what he wants to achieve throughout and his brilliance as a sculpture that eventually, when you stand back, you just get this wonderful sense of a bit of drapery tacked up on a wall, flowing through, crossing the fireplace, and held up with these two beautiful figures that look across this great space as if for eternity.
I'm at Goodwood in Sussex, the seat of the Dukes of Richmond and their sons, the Earls of March. Goodwood's connection with motorsports dates back to 1948, when the 9th Duke of Richmond created the Goodwood Motor Circuit on a wartime airfield nearby. In the 1950s and 60s, it was one of Britain's most prestigious circuits, hosting Formula One races and the World Championships.
The checkered flag for Ken Morton in the BRM after the fastest ever race at Goodwood. The Duke of Richmond presents the cup to the man of the day.
The 9th Duke was himself an acclaimed racing driver, known as Freddie March. The current Lord March decided to carry on his grandfather's work, and he restored the famous circuit 7 years ago.
There you are. Can I hop in?
Yeah, I do. Come and jump in.
Thank you very much. This is your grandfather's car?
It is. Well, it wasn't actually his car, funny enough, but it was a car that it's a 1930s AC.
Yeah.
And he was quite a good stylist, and he very much was responsible for this double scuttle
Oh, is he?
on English sports cars. And this, I think, is probably his finest piece of design. So I was very pleased to be able to buy it a few years ago.
You got it back?
We got it back, yeah.
And it's on his course?
This track was designed by the Ministry of Defence, really, because
Really?
it was the perimeter track for the Battle of Britain airfield that was here.
Oh, that was just in the,
during the war.
just the
Right here, still very active aerodrome here, and run by the estate. And then this track was discovered by the young pilots, if you like,
exactly.
during the war. And after the war, they came to my grandfather and said, hey, let's make a great racetrack. And he had quite a successful record as a driver at Brooklands. Before the war, was a great engineer, and cars were his passion. So he immediately got hold of that, and they had the first race meeting here in '48, and it ran very successfully and was the kind of the circuit to come to until '66. And then he closed it in '66.
You're responsible for the revival here.
I'm afraid I am, really, yes. We rebuilt the circuit completely, tried to bring it back to its former glory in '98, and then we created this thing called the Good Revival, which is the biggest stock motor race in the world now, amazingly, and we have about 110,000 people here.
110,000?
The whole point of it, really, is it's a completely period event. So we think it's the only sporting event in the world which takes place completely in period. Everyone comes dressed appropriately, driving the right cars. We don't allow any car on site that's post-1966.
So it's all people in 1950s and 1960s outfits?
It's wild. I mean, people come in wartime kit, they come looking like hippies, and it's really the only classic racetrack in the world now that's still exactly in its original form. So Jackie Stewart and Jim Clark still have the lap record here. And you can test your lap time.
That must be the wonderful thing about when you came to revive it. The name still resonated everywhere, didn't it? Goodwill was the same.
Absolutely. I mean, the archive's wonderful, and the history of the place is extraordinary. This is British motor racing.
Yeah. So come on, make my day.
Okay, then, here we go.
But there's another sport that's associated with this family. Some of the earliest known cricket matches were played on these grounds. So this is the cricket pavilion put up just after the war, but in fact cricket's been played here a great deal longer than that.
It has. We know it's been played here since 1702. That was in the first Duke's time. It may well have been played here before that.
It's an extraordinary length of time. And it must be one of the earliest sites of cricket matches
ever. I think
it
probably is. I wouldn't claim to be the first.
No.
But over 300 years.
And the other thing that's associated with cricket here is your family rather regularised the activity, didn't they?
Yes, we did indeed. The second Duke was very important in the game of cricket. One of the things he did was to lend Mr. Lord some money to enable Mr. Lord to find a cricket ground in North London, incidentally.
Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of it. Yes. But also, he wrote down the rules with a man called Mr. Broderick, later Lord Middleton, for a famous cricket match which took place in 1727.
Yeah. Did he play, the Duke himself?
He did play.
Yeah.
He certainly did.
Yeah.
And he wrote down the rules, and there they are, the oldest known set of rules of the game, which is still in existence. And I've got them here with me.
Those are the actual ones?
This is the second Duke's rules.
Yes, it's signed Richmond, I see.
Signed Richmond and A. Broderick.
Rather smaller.
That's it. And number 11 in the rules that I so much like, it says that there shall be one umpire of each side, and that if any of the gamesters, that's the players, shall speak or give their opinion on any point of the game, they are to be turned out.
No.
And voided in the match. But this is not to extend to the Duke of Richmond and Mr. Broderick. Very proper.
Very proper. And the problem with those rules is that they had no idea of boundaries, did they?
No, there were no boundaries. And if you hit the ball, it went, no matter how far it went, you just went on running. And I have seen them running here in the historic matches for 8 runs, something like that.
It must tire you out after a while. You quite see eventually why they put in boundaries. And this is the actual ground they played on?
Well, we think so. We don't have absolutely concrete proof. The only reason that we know there was cricket here in 1702 was because we have a receipt that was given to the Duke because he bought a barrel of brandy to give to the winning team.
Well, I guess they got it after they'd won.
I do explain to visiting teams now that I'm very sorry they're not getting a barrel of brandy.
What is so beguiling about these early dukes is how they all seem to combine a love of the good things in life with a willingness to spend money on them, especially works of art. This spectacular purchase by the third Duke of Richmond, a dinner and dessert service, is now considered to be one of the most important collections of Sèvres porcelain in the country.
This is all Sèvres belonging to the third Duke. He went to Paris as ambassador in November 1765. He'd only been there for a week when, accompanied by Horace Walpole and his Duchess, he went down to visit the porcelain factory at Sèvres, southwest Paris, and had a great day out. And he spent £500 on a dinner service.
Think how much money that was.
A huge amount of money. And in fact, they had the best painters. They had Chapuis and Aloncle. Now, the birds painted on this china are the first real birds to be painted at Sèvres on the porcelain, as opposed to imaginary ones. And the Duke must have had the idea of the china before he went to Paris, because he took with him his father's bird books. And these are a natural history of birds.
Oh yes, I can see. They're by George Edwards, but they're published in London in 1747.
1747.
So he took these with him to Paris.
He must have taken them with him to Paris, because we know that painters came up from Sèvres to the British Embassy in Paris and painted the Duke's china.
That way round? That way round. The books weren't then down to the manufacturer?
No, the books didn't go down to Sèvres at all. The painters came to the embassy.
They must have cursed it. With these incredibly precious porcelain.
Yes, incredibly precious books.
Exactly, yes.
And so they copied these wonderful images by George Edwards of the birds. And you see in this one, it's quite extraordinary, it has Stonehenge in the background.
So it does, and this is a great bustard.
Absolutely. And as a result, you have this wonderful French china, and on it are painted exotic birds, but with something as English as Stonehenge in the background. And that makes it very rare indeed.
And I love the wonderful toucan, I think.
Oh, yes, the
toucan,
yes.
And over there is Mr. Toucan.
He's on the slot case.
Yes, he's looking wonderful, he's so happy.
Yes, very proud.
Long before the Guinness advert.
Yes. And then you get the owl who is on the teapot. And very splendid parrot. It's really the most important Sèvres in England, because although there are wonderful other collections at Waddesdon, the Wallace collection, all that Sèvres was actually collected after the French Revolution, whereas this at Goodwood was commissioned by the Duke, 1765 and 6, and has been in the family ever since.
For most of the 18th century, the principal home of the Dukes of Richmond had been their London townhouse. But after fire destroyed it in 1791, Goodwood became their main residence, and it was enlarged into the house that you see today. But at the back, you can still find parts of the earlier Goodwood in the Long Hall, created out of the original Jacobean hunting lodge in the 1730s.
This is a spectacular room. We have Ionic columns, these fat cushions at the top, with these fluted piers either side, and swags above the doors. If that wasn't enough, you get a screen of columns, absolutely the same at the end, and this time dividing two niches with classical sculptures. I love this mixture of classical architecture derived ultimately from Palladio, which Morris and the Earl of Burlington and indeed the second Duke of Richmond were all infected with. It also gave him just what he was looking for. He'd been on the Grand Tour in the 1720s, and he brought back from Italy, like everybody else, wonderful pictures. And here they are in their gilded frames, looking rich against these wonderful green walls. Goodwood had suddenly come alive for the family. It was not just going to be a hunting box, it was going to be their seat in the country. And here they are at the beginning of what was to be an enormous building campaign over a century, starting out, creating one of the most beautiful Palladian rooms anywhere in England.
The most ravishing objects in this room are two paintings by a Venetian artist who had come to London in the mid-1740s to seek new patrons. The second Duke of Richmond commissioned two works showing the views from his London home. The artist was Canaletto.
Of all the works of art at Goodwood, this and its companion piece, Great Views of London, painted by Canaletto, are undoubted European masterpieces. Canaletto brought all those brilliant hallmarks of his trade, his understanding of light, water and air, which he gained through years of practice in Venice, to bear on the greatest metropolitan city in Europe at that time, London. And it's a busy London with traffic going to and fro across the river. One of the things you notice is the boats, these small boats, carrying people as if they were taxis. And that's exactly what they were. And there, across this huge sweep of the River Thames, you can see the arc of the city punctured or populated all the way along with those steeples and spires erected after the Great Fire by Christopher Wren and his school. And then most magnificently, all right in the centre, rising way up into the sky, just as it does today, Wren's masterpiece, St. Paul's Cathedral. And the second of these great London views is just a slightly less familiar sight. Basically, it's Whitehall. In the far distance, to just to the right of the big building, is a spire poking up, brilliantly white, and that's the new church of St. Martin's in the Fields, which today overlooks Trafalgar Square. It's a wonderfully busy scene. In the centre, there's a large area where people are just walking and enjoying themselves. Families, family groups coming together, ladies in those wonderful wide pannier dresses, moving across, sailing almost across the landscape. And Canaletto captures them each with his characteristic quick brushstrokes. Even in the courtyard of the house itself, you get maids and men servants about their business. And I love the way Canaletto actually captures the chickens scratching away. It's a thoroughly engaging, rather relaxed scene of a great metropolitan town. It brings all the skills of Canaletto who had learnt in Venice to bear on a wholly new landscape for him, and he brings it off triumphantly well.
In the Red Hall, Rosemary mentioned a theme familiar in the history of great estates: how aristocratic fortunes can come and go. The third Duke had overextended himself, and now in the early 19th century, the family was deep in debt.
After the death of, you may remember, that very extravagant third Duke in 1806, the fourth Duke and Duchess couldn't afford to live at Goodwood because of all the debtors.
Yeah.
And so they went to live in Brussels. The Duchess of Richmond had 7 daughters, so she was very keen to marry them off.
Yes.
And people partied away night after night. On the 15th June, 1815, the Duchess had prepared to give a ball. And so that evening, while they were all dancing, the messenger arrived to tell the Duke of Wellington that in fact Napoleon had crossed into Belgium. And the Duke of Wellington took the Duke of Richmond away into a private room, and he pointed to the map and he said, "Napoleon has humbugged me, by God. He has gained 24 hours march on me." And so soon after that, the young officers started to leave the ball. And the poor Duchess, of course, was distraught because soon on the floor there were only civilians and ladies. And the Duchess stands at the door begging them not to leave.
Not to leave.
Even though there's a war on.
So suddenly in the middle of this dance, this ball, everybody's told they have to go, all the men.
Yes.
And presumably also the Lennox sons,
Absolutely.
who were at Waterloo, weren't
Yes,
they?
yes,
And
Earl
they're
of
over
March.
here, aren't they?
Yes, Earl of March and Lord George.
In this cabinet.
In this cabinet, yes.
Can I open it?
Yes, please do.
I'll be
absolutely.
careful. Here it goes.
Yeah.
Quite heavy.
And so we have, over here, we have the younger son, Lord George, and then here, the Earl of March.
He, if I remember rightly, Marries the daughter of one of the really great people involved in the battle.
Absolutely.
Lord Uxbridge?
Uxbridge, Earl of Uxbridge.
And this is her?
This is Lady Caroline Paget,
Yeah.
daughter of the Earl of Uxbridge. Now, Lord Uxbridge, very brave, and he was horribly injured, and he looked down and said to the Duke of Wellington, "By Gad, I've lost my leg." And the Duke of Wellington, very cool, looked down and just said, "By Gad, so you have."
That wonderful sang-froid.
Absolutely.
This, I think, is a letter he had to write to his wife, because you had to tell her.
Absolutely.
You couldn't just hop into London on one leg and sort of surprise her.
So this is the letter to Dearest Shah, be bold, prepare for misfortune. I have lost my right leg. A miracle might have saved it, but for the sake of you and my dear children, I have taken the better chance of preserving my life. God bless you all. In fact, the leg was buried in a little grave.
Well, separately?
In Waterloo. Yes.
Was it really?
Yes, it was interred. And then, anyway, his daughter, Lady Caroline Paget, became engaged to the Earl of March, and they were married a couple of years later.
And he eventually becomes, what, the fifth Duke?
Fifth Duke of Richmond.
And on it goes again.
On it goes.
On the estate is another fine example of Georgian architecture. It may look like a grand country residence, but it is actually the kennels, where the hounds of the hunt were kept in great comfort and style. Today it's the site of Lord March's latest restoration project.
It's long been my ambition to try and bring all the Goodwood sports together.
Yeah.
Motor racing, the horse racing, the golf, the flying, shooting, and the cricket. And this is going to be the kennels is going to be the clubhouse, if you like, for all our sports. So this will be the kind of embodiment of sport at Goodwood. The kennels were built in 1787.
By the third Duke's favourite architect again?
Yes, by Wyatt again.
Yeah.
To house the hunt.
And how does it work then? You say to house the hunt, presumably there is literally a little house in the middle here, isn't there, with chimneys and so on. So that's where the kennelman lived?
Yes, I think the huntsman and the staff lived in the middle.
Yeah.
And the hounds literally lived in centrally heated kennels. Either side. They were very, very well looked after, rather better than the guests in the house there.
And it's also made of those sort of, the distinctive feature about your buildings here is this use of flint, your local stone, so to speak.
The flint and then this yellow brickwork is on all the sort of outbuildings around the estate.
And the flint's literally coming out of the ground underneath it.
It is. It's everywhere.
It's the advantage of living on the edge of the downs, of course.
The flint's readily at hand, but the people to lay it not so readily.
No, are they not? So this will be finished in a year or two's time?
No, it'll be finished this year.
No.
Yeah, no. Literally a couple of months' time, I hope.
Cracking on as usual.
Absolutely, yeah.
I like that. There's always projects. I bet there's all sorts of other ideas up in that head of yours.
Afraid there are, yeah. Lots of things
really
coming out. I'm trying to push them down at the moment, yeah.
But it's these entrepreneurial ideas which continue that tradition of innovation that is so characteristic of Lord March's ancestors that should secure the future prosperity of this estate. If you want to know more about the houses I've been visiting, I've written a book that accompanies this series.
Next week, James travels to an Elizabethan property in Lincolnshire recently used in filming The Da Vinci Code of hidden treasure houses next Thursday at 7:15. Next tonight, Bride and Grooming.